was so looking forward to working with Vardy because he's right up my street. You know, he's got, I think of the strikers I've worked with and the Suarez, and he's got that sheer pace which frightens teams. Yeah, probably not the right thing to say, to be honest. Not the right thing to say. Chelsea were great for me in my career. Being behind 1-0, then that became difficult for us. But I certainly didn't say to go out and blow them away. That was never ever was the instruction. It was go and play our game.
Brendan Rodgers is no longer the Liverpool manager.
Clearly, obviously, the decision was made, but I wasn't aware of it. The first I spoke to the ownership was with Mike Gordon on the way back after the game when I arrived back at the training ground. You know, I was only the third manager in the history of the club to complete the treble. We were able to do it as an invincible treble, and then we did it again. You know, so. And then people will say, well, you could have stayed and done a third one, and then you could have done a fourth one. Like, I had family who were just distraught.
Yeah.
I left Celtic, like, just couldn't believe it. I've relations that haven't spoke to me since the day I left Celtic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to yet again another episode of the Beautiful Game podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Budge, joined by my faithful two co-conspirators, Dot and Dej. Gents, how's it going? It's sunny afternoon.
Yeah, I'm very well, Budge.
Good. How about you, Dej?
I'm doing very, very well. As you can see, we're joined by... Anyway, Budge, let's just get started. This is so overwhelming.
This is the real watershed moment for us on the platform, indeed. We are in very, very well esteemed company. And this gentleman is a manager in the Premier League, right at the top of the game. He used 3 words to describe the kind of manager he is: communication, ambition, and right. This is a man who's coached up and down the country. He, at Celtic, won the domestic treble twice, as well as the Scottish League Cup in 2018/19. He's a real slickster and a smooth operator, and certainly got away with words. Perhaps in a previous life, he might have been a poet or a politician. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the man, the oracle, the philosopher, Brendan Rodgers.
Welcome.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks for coming on,
Can I
Brendan. Appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Can I just say it's an absolute honor to have you on the platform, and you've been great with me, and thank you very much. But just to kick things off, we've spoken to so many players, coaches. Mick Beale speaks very highly of you. We interviewed Frank Nouble. He said, Brendan Rodgers, what a character. John Joe Shelby came onto the platform and said, that was the first manager that used to give me spuds. Like, what is it about you that players just seem to absolutely adore and love you?
I don't know, son. That's probably for other people to talk about. I think what I've always tried to do, whether I'm a coach or now a manager, is I've always tried to emotionally activate players, because I think that you can be as talented as you want. So if I know that you can run from here to the end of that room in 0.5 of a second, but if you don't want to run, it doesn't matter. So I need to know what's going to make you run. And for that, that's just about people. It is all about people. It's about understanding the guy, the person. You know, even though everyone's in a team game, it's very much still about individual improvement and development. So I always try to understand the player, but before that, understand the person, and then find that hook emotionally that will make them do their very, very best.
Yeah, so we spoke to Michael Beale, and he was a youth coach, and he's probably had a similar career path to you. And he mentioned on our platform that you need to find that connection, you know, mentally and physically with players, and you need to know what ticks for. Do you think this has been something that has aided you throughout your managerial career?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you are as a person as well. I care about people first and foremost. You know, the BR on my shirt doesn't mean anything if I'm an idiot as a guy and can't connect with people. So I have a genuine care for players, and every player I work with, I tend to try to be as honest as I can with them, and I'll treat them like they're my own son. You know, I'll give them the advice that I would have given my own son. So, so I think that's what's absolutely key in showing empathy for players and being able to be sincere in how you speak with them. And sometimes that's not always what they want to hear, but if you're sincere and you're sincere with your words to them, then you hope that you can find that connection.
A question I wanted to ask Brendan is one that's sort of looking back in hindsight, right? And this is taking you all the way back to very, very early on in your career. So whilst you were playing. And the key point and word that comes to mind is perspective, and how often perspective can change over time, right? Now, when you go back and you look at your playing career, of course, it's reported that, you know, you were retire early because of a niggling issue that you had with your knee. But then sort of after that, you spent a long time working as a youth coach and working with young players and whatnot whilst you were still young. So looking back at it, of course, at the time, you might have been frustrated and upset that your playing career came to a halt so early on. But when you look at it now, do you feel like it almost gave you an advantage in your managerial career because you were able to spend such a long time working with young players, and you're quite young now, and you've been able to amass so much experience over that period of time?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Listen, when I stopped playing, I was a talented young player that was good enough to move across from Northern Ireland to England. So my whole idea was that I wanted to be a top player, like probably all of us. You want to be the very best player you can be, right? But I was always realistic as well. When I was struggling in around that 19, 20 years of age, I had a decision to make. I also I dabbled into non-league for a little bit as well. And the brutal honesty was, it wasn't for me. You know, I always, my vision was always to try and be the best that I could be. And when I went in there, the good guys were having to work for a living as well, and whilst playing, and their love of football was there. But that wasn't why I came to England. So I had a decision to make, and to be honest, it was pretty straightforward. I either go home and try and earn a living, maybe playing part-time football or whatever, or go down a different route. And a guy had said to me, a guy called Kevin Dillon, who used to coach at Reading and played for Newcastle and whatnot, and he was a fantastic player. He actually said to me when I was young, he said, "You'd be a great coach. You're very good technically, and you can demonstrate with young players." And I'd never thought about coaching before. And then around that age, when I went on my first course, that's when it all lit up for me, because I felt I'm not going to be a top player. And even if I was fit, I wouldn't have been a top player. That's the reality. You know, I just wasn't probably quick enough. I could do all the skills, I had all the touches, I knew the game, but I didn't have the body of a top player. So, but my brain was always thinking top level. So from that age then, from 20 to 30, I then set out on a journey to learn. And to this day, I'm exactly the same. And like I would say to you guys, you never stop developing. And I've never been one where when I reach something, I feel that's it. I'll develop until the day I drop into my coffin. So you got to keep learning. But that early stage for me was invaluable, because I could make mistakes out of the spotlight. You know, I have empathy for players and top players in particular who go right the way through a career and then maybe at 34, 35 have to go straight into management. because their mistakes is in front of the camera. So I was fortunate in a way where, okay, I didn't have the football career, but now I could invest time into learning.
Yeah, so Brendan, we're going to talk about the here and now. Obviously, the coronavirus epidemic has just thrown everything off course, and there's been that there's going to be, close contact training. How have Leicester overseen the coronavirus situation? And we've recently seen players come out and said they're not going to train due to feeling uncomfortable. Troy Deeney came out. Obviously now he's going to go back to training because he's comfortable with the information that's been given. N'Golo Kante, he's had some heart issues, so he wanted to stay away from the training base. How has Leicester been handling the whole pandemic? And what stage are you at with training?
Well, stage 2 actually began today.
Okay.
So this morning we were back to full contact. Now, over the course since it started, I can only talk about Leicester City, but we'll come out of this whole pandemic and situation a stronger club, because what it has allowed us to do is communicate even closer. So from the board to the manager to the players, the rhythm of our work totally changed. We've had to be agile, but we've also had to be transparent in it all as well. And that's something that has really been key to it. We've all known each other, every single one of us, each step of the way, what was happening. The communication side of it all has been very, very clear, and obviously the leadership style of and how we've wanted to work. We've tried to really take the lead with it, with the players and the staff. And that's how it's been. We've taken every precaution here at the training ground to make sure that the objective is to have the safest environment. And I can totally understand why the likes of Troy and Gallo and the boys here, I talk to them, and they know that with Kante, that this is a guy who just gets on with his life, and he's an amazing player. So for him to question or consider going back, they know there's definitely something that he's feeling. And you have to respect that. But what you have to do is try and create look to have the safest environment you can. And then I think when players then come back into it, they will gradually feel that confidence. And we did that. We brought the players back on an individual basis, so they could see everything around the training ground, all the work that has been done to keep them safe. We then brought them back into groups of 5 for the last week. And then to know we can go full contact today, we still separated 2 groups. One group started at 10 till 11:30, one at 11:30 till 1 o'clock. And they were in 2 groups of 12. So there was contact, but it wasn't what we would know as contact full on. So, and it was great. The players came through it well. It's given them confidence, and now they'll come back in tomorrow and continue with the process.
Brendan, did any of your players, raise concerns to you, suggesting that they may not be comfortable returning to training? Because we spoke to a few FA registered intermediaries, and they've said a lot of players have been, pretty reticent to go back to work. So, how have your players been?
They've been first class. I think what we've tried to be with them is as open and honest as we possibly can. So from day one in the process, we've been liaising with Wes and Kasper Schmeichel, so our captain and assistant. And we've been liaising with our leadership group, where we have 6 players, a mixture of young and old, outlining every process right the way through. And then obviously we've been having our big group Zoom chats. So I think communication is absolutely key in all of this. And I think because of that, then the players have always been first class with it. So listen, for sure, everyone was a little bit tentative. I think it's not until you come into the when you actually feel and see everything that's going on, and then you do your work, you then start to realise this could actually be the safest place for you to be, because you're getting tested twice a week. Everything is prepared here for you. And the players have been first class. So we've had no one really that has not wanted to train or not wanted to give it an opportunity to work, which is great.
Brendan, I wanted to ask a question. Now we're talking about preparation and players returning to training and whatnot. It's a question that I've always had in my mind, and I've always wanted to ask, in that, do certain players have tailored fitness programs for them to work on specific things, say? And the reason why I ask is because of the curious case of Jamie Vardy, right? So you look at his age, generally speaking, right? What you tend to see is, you know, post 30, from a physicality standpoint and fitness and so on and so forth, that players tend to start their decline, right? But if you're looking at sprints per game, if you're looking at just on an eye test, right? The guy is as fit as a fiddle. He's running up and down, left, right, and center. And in terms of the way, you know, the way that you guys play and how integral he is to that, is there ever a worry that he might, you know, overexert himself, or, you know, he might need to be managed slightly differently to a player who is a bit younger, say?
I think you do that as a manager. You know, it's, you know, you can't treat the 17-year-old the same as the 27-year-old or the 37-year-old. So like so Wes Morgan now is 36, and I'll manage him differently to Cags, our young centre half. And James is exactly the same. I don't think you can throw a blanket over everyone the same, because it's the dynamics, how the players are physically and mentally are different. So, but I've got to say, coming into Leicester City, I was so looking forward to working with Vardy, because he's right up my street. You know, he's got, you know, I think of the strikers I've worked with, and the Suarez, and, you know, he's got that sheer pace which frightens team, you know. And I've really sensed that when I've been in the Premier League and when we've gone away from home and playing in certain grounds. Once he's right on the limit of the back four and he's away, you sense the home crowd, just the guy.
Yeah.
They know he's away and you're not catching it. He's so explosive. But what has been a real nice surprise about Jamie, he's tactically so good in the game. He knows football. He watches football, he watches games like you guys and I will, and study the game and loves the game. He knows football. But
you see him going into coaching?
Maybe one day. I think he's, the point you last made, I think, first of all, at 33, he's still fit. And maybe coming into the game a bit later, he was what, about 24? And he came into the game. So maybe that will give him a few extra miles on the clock. In terms of speed, he's as quick as I've ever worked with over that 20 metres. He's so explosive. He's very lean. He's adapting his diet. And of course, he's been absolutely brilliant for me, you know. So now a real top class striker, different to the strikers in the Premier League, but for threat, he's incredible.
Brendan, very quickly before we move on to your time at Chelsea, we spoke to Danny Simpson earlier on in the week, and he said, you know, leaving Leicester was one of the toughest decisions of his life, because he said you were absolutely amazing to him, and he only spent 4 months with you, and he said you are one of the best managers he's ever worked with. And I also asked him about Jamie Vardy in terms of, do you think we'll ever see another Jamie Vardy again? So, for example, he came in the game late from non-league, became a Premier League winner at Leicester. In my opinion, the most historical Premier League win. He went on to be an England international, and now, for me, he's a Premier League legend. So do you think we'll ever see someone like that again, or do you think those days are gone?
Well, no, I think it always comes up from time to time. I think to go through that story of what Jamie's been through will be very, very difficult for any player. But there'll always be that hope out there that there's a young player that, for whatever reason, through the system at 18, 19, he's gone in to non-league because he wants to play with his mates. But then after a few years, he realises, actually, I can be a professional, like, just because I've matured more. So, and I think up and down the country, there's so many talented players, you know, especially in non-league football. It's just whether they can then make that switch mentally to preparing and being professional. So Jamie's journey is unique, and it's unique to, but I would hope that going forward there will be a few more players like that can come out of the woodwork. And okay, you don't need to be ready at 17, 18. If you are, amazing. But by 21, 22, if you get that opportunity, then it's, I think Jamie has shown the path for every young player, if they are in non-league, that you can still achieve your dream.
Yeah, so Brendan, obviously we're going to go back to the start because I think your career has been a marvelous one so far, and a lot of it works in chronological order. So we want to go back to Chelsea, who you joined in 2004, and you had a great time working with the likes of Michael Mancienne, Jack Cork, players like that. How crucial was that period for you in terms of your development and us seeing the manager we see today?
That was a huge part. I spent 14 years in total at Reading, 10 as working as a coach in the academy. And when I finished my apprenticeship there, which was a great time for me, my next step going into Chelsea in 2004 was going into a world-class environment. So I knew that I was going to go in and work in an environment that was at the very highest level, with top-level people, and of course, young players and senior players that were some of the best in the world. So my time at Chelsea provided an incredible foundation for me, with working with young players and then working with some of the world-class players. And of course, that then gave me the confidence then to go on and become a manager.
Yeah, so you worked with Jose Mourinho during your time at Chelsea, and this is a manager we see today. Obviously, he's a Tottenham manager right now. There's been a lot of criticism, people saying he's a man of yesteryear. You knowing him so well, do you still think he can challenge for titles with Tottenham? And how good is he as a manager? And also, how is he as a man?
Yeah, well, when I joined, it was Jose had joined in June of 2004, and I joined in the early September. And for me, it was a fascinating period working with him, because he'd just come from being a European champion at Porto. And I think everyone's seen the impact from the outside looking in what he'd made to Chelsea in those first few years. And I was fortunate because I was in pole position to that. You know, a young coach, 10 years younger than Jose, but just getting the chance to see how he worked in terms of the detail in his work, how hard he worked, his charisma with the players, his courage as a coach. And I got a wonderful insight into the elite level of coaching by working with Jose. And a great time for me also. So I have a huge amount of respect. I'll always be grateful for that period. And I work with other good guys in there as well, like Neil Bath, the academy manager there. Neil was a great guy, and I work very closely with him. Frank Arneson, who's a big name in the European game. Frank offered me great support as well. But Jose, from a managing and coaching perspective, he was, he played a real key part in my development. And like I said, it's something that I'll always be grateful for.
You know what, Brendan?
Yeah, so Jose Mourinho has been obviously criticised recently. People are saying maybe he's the man of yesteryear. Do you still think he can compete at that top level? Because when we think about managers nowadays, people talk about it being Klopp's time, Pep's time, and Mourinho's constantly having to prove himself. Do you believe he's still got what it takes to win trophies at the highest level and deliver for Tottenham?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the older you get, the more experience you get, the better you become. You know, it's as simple as that. He's proven to be a world-class coach. It will always be also about the players that you work with. You know, you have to work with top-level players in order to, if you're going to win trophies and win consistently. So, but there's absolutely no doubt. You know, he's a world-class coach, and he's proven that over time, and I'm sure he'll continue to do that for his career.
You know what, Brendan, I actually wanted to follow up on Dej's question there, because we've obviously just been speaking about Jose Mourinho, but you've also mentioned in the past that you can draw inspiration from the work from Marcelo Bielsa and Johan Cruyff, for example. And I just wondered if you'd ever learn any lessons from a more unexpected source. So, of course, these are managers that you've either previously worked with or have been able to observe their work. But have there been any lessons that you've learned along the road that perhaps came from nowhere that you wouldn't have expected before? Have you been taught something, a thing or two by the players that you've worked with, for example?
Yeah, no, both players and coaches and managers. When I was a really young coach at Reading, Alan Pardew was starting out in management then, and Alan was fantastic at Reading, and he was very good, and I learned a lot of things from Alan in that period, just watching him and just his patience with me as a youth coach and even as a manager. And I was taking the youth team. He was very interested in my work, which was slightly different, but he respected it, and we had a lot of really good conversations. And of course, I'm very curious. I like to find things out. I like to observe. I like to look at things. I'm also, as a manager, I'm into the leadership side as well. So I look into, I look into that side in terms of how and little tips on managing people and creating a vision for your club and your team going forward. So, but no, I've learned so much from so many people I couldn't even name you, and that's because, like I say, I'm curious to learn and to ask questions, and something that I'll always continue to do.
Brendan, it's known publicly that you're a massive fan of Johan Cruyff, and for me, I've always seen you as a manager that loves the passing brand of football, the attacking, expressive, expansive brand. So did you almost model your philosophy on that 1990s dream team that had, Romario, Pep Guardiola, etc. in it?
No, I think from a young person, a young player, I loved the technical game. My father absolutely adored Brazilian football. So he adored the skillful player who could excite him. And so I grew up watching that type of player. And then I suppose I tried to be that, but was never as good. But that was my game. And also I grew up in a time where British players were, they were maybe deemed not technically as good as European players. So my philosophy very much when I was younger was based around, it's about giving players confidence. You see kids from the streets of London and up and down the country, they do tricks and they do things that are absolutely phenomenal. But if they don't have a coach who can give them confidence to take that onto the pitch, then and they don't have, and they're frightened to be creative, then there's a waste of talent there. So my identity has always been that fusion between the British mentality, where that fight and that spirit and technique and quality, and the European game. So where the tactical side of the game, and then can we then bring the two together and then have your players, whether they're British players, wherever they're from, play a technical game at a high level, a tactical game, and I always like, I suppose, my teams to take the game by the scruff of the neck, to impose the style, and because I think that's what supporters want. But that philosophy has been with me since I was a young coach, wanting to impose my way in the game, looking to press the game, be aggressive in the game, and like I say, have good balance. And obviously that has developed over a number of years.
Yeah, so Brendan, you took your first managerial role at Watford, then you went over to Reading, and you made a lasting impression on a lot of the players there. Dave Kitson, Joby McAnuff, they've all come out and said you tried to teach them Spanish. You thought that this was very important for their personal development. and he would often bark out instructions in Spanish, you know, to try and make them understand a particular message. Going into that job at Reading, you know, taking over from probably the best manager in Reading's history, Steve Coppell, in changing that philosophy. How did you find that challenge, and what lessons did you learn from it?
Maybe that was my problem. Maybe I was talking English. Maybe I should have talked English. I might have lasted 20 odd games. So, no, listen, that was probably the saddest part of my career at Reading, because I loved the club. I'd lived in the city for 20 odd years. I'd left Watford when I shouldn't have done, but I did. I felt it was right to go back to Reading. I thought they were going to be closer. I was so hungry to get to the Premier League, and I felt that Reading would give me the chance quicker. And it was the club I knew. And when I went there, it didn't quite work out for me. Nothing to do with the players. The players were brilliant. It just didn't work out. You're absolutely right. Steve was a legend there. He was the greatest manager in history, and there was a nice feeling for me to go in there. But I think there was also a lot of frustration with the club, because they'd just come out of the Premier League. They were selling about 14 players that were going that summer. And the idea of then having to rebuild for 2-3 years seemed nice in theory. Actually, when we got started, it proved difficult. So yeah, I ended up, obviously, I got the sack from there on December the 16th it was. So back in 2009. But again, a great learning. But all those guys, I worked with Joby at Watford, took him to Reading, an amazing guy, bright, clever. They were fantastic for me. But yeah, the players weren't the problem. I was the problem.
So Brendan, we're going to move on and speak a little bit about your time at Swansea. But just before we do that, I wanted to ask a question. And the question is, before you decide to join a club and take on a new challenge, generally, what is your thought process? What are the things that you consider? What are the non-negotiables? So you're not going to take on a new challenge unless these I wouldn't say these conditions are met, but you need to see these sort of things in place, or the plans for certain things to be in place. What's the general feeling and thought process for you?
Well, I always join a club because of the sporting vision of what it is they want to achieve. And obviously I've been sacked at Reading. I was renowned for being this coach, and I was then in a manager's job in Watford at Reading for 1 year, and then I was out of work. And so now I'm under pressure, because I've coached right through my life for 15 years, built up a decent reputation. I now go into management. It started okay, and then all of a sudden I'm out of a job. Now I know my next job, I'm under pressure. So, and I need to not just get a club, I need to get the right club. And when I was out of work, I wrote to a few clubs, didn't get any reply. But when I spoke with Hugh Jenkins at Swansea, we just clicked. We talked for about 5 hours, and this was the first guy I had in football as a manager. This is a chairman, but he was like a sporting director. And Hugh, I didn't need to convince about football. It was so refreshing. He understood totally, and that's why the philosophy at Swansea was there. He got the game, and for me it was so refreshing. But I'll always look at the sporting vision of the club, and going into Swansea, they wanted to ensure that they stayed in the Championship. There was a vision of playing an attractive brand of football, because that's what the Swansea supporters had been brought up in from many years. And then there was also the challenge, because you had Cardiff, who were the big rivals. It was who was going to be the first team, Welsh team, into the Premier League. And of course, Cardiff had they were missing out when they played Blackpool. The year Blackpool went up, they beat Cardiff in the final. Cardiff had a much bigger. So there was the challenge then, the sporting challenge of, could we then become the first team into the Premier League? So that's the first thing I look for. I know, like most coaches, and all the jobs I've taken, it's the money aspect. I know that lots of clubs I've been at, they're never going to be the highest payers. They're never going to be the club that's going to give out the most money. However, as long as I can develop players and improve players and make them better and have no compromise on preparation, then that's what I'll always seek when I go into a club.
Brendan, talk to us about your time at Swansea, because from the outside looking in, me personally, if I had to ask you off record, what is your favourite team to work with? I potentially feel you may say that Swansea team, because what you done there was absolutely unreal. I mean, you had Leon Britton in the midfield, Joe Allen, Ashley Williams, so many good players. You got promoted into the Premier League and you just took the league by storm. You were just a breath of fresh air. Like, it was literally on every Saturday, Dej, did you see Swansea's performance this weekend? Did you see the way they played this team off the pitch? So just talk to us about your time at that club, because I'm sure they'll remember you forever.
Yeah, it was like a magic carpet ride, really. You know, we'd gone in, but we just missed out on automatic promotion.
Yeah.
We finished third in the league, so we're now in the playoffs. And then I arrive into the game, the playoff final, funny enough, against Reading, the team that sacked me. And I'm now in the biggest life-changing game of my career. You know, because from that, we won that game, got promoted. And then the whole idea was, could we then go into work with the way we wanted to play and our idea of football and bring that to the Premier League? And I always felt that our game model would work well in the Premier League, because it was about having the ball, it was about being creative, and I felt we could do well. And it was really a combination of everything. I players that were hungry, players, a lot of them had never been to that level. They'd come up through the lower league, you know, and then all of a sudden we got into the Premier League. And our identity we wanted to maintain in there, you know, because after, I think it was about 4 games, we hadn't scored, and we played well.
Yeah,
but people said,
I remember there was a game against Manchester City. I remember, I think your first game of the season, you lost 4-0. But when I saw that game, I was saying to Dot, this is a talented manager. You could see your philosophy, your principles were non-negotiable. And I said to Dot at that stage that this manager is going straight to the top. Because if you're able to work with, no disrespect to them, because they were talented players, but better players, then, you know, you're one to watch.
Yeah. Well, for 60, were fantastic. And then, you know, the problem, they brought on Aguero. That was actually his first game in England against.
He hit the ground running, didn't he?
Against us, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy costs more than our stadium. And he's come on, and then they let the game, and then they end up winning 4-0. But from that game, we got a great confidence. You know, our next game we drew 0. Next 2 games, Wigan and Sunderland. Our 4th game, we lost away at the Emirates. It was unfortunate. We made a mistake. We lost 1-0. So now going into the 5th game, we're under pressure. But that was, we hadn't scored at that point. We played well, but everyone was saying, can they survive in the Premier League? But it was just about, I had no compromise in how we would play. There was no, this is how we work. And then in our 5th game, we beat West Brom 3-0 at home, and we were fantastic, and that was the start of it then. And then we had some great performances against big teams, beating Arsenal and teams, you know. So Man City at home, drawn with Liverpool, but close with Chelsea. So with some fantastic games, and it was a great season for us.
Brendan, in March 2012, you know where I'm coming. You know where I'm coming to. You famously said, I want to make my career, not break my career, when you were linked with the Chelsea job. A few months later, you signed, you know, for Liverpool. What made you be reticent towards Chelsea, but accept the Liverpool job?
Yeah, probably not the right thing to say, to be honest.
Mm.
Not the right thing to say. Chelsea were great for me in my career. When I got to the end of the season, I'd actually signed a contract for Swansea in the January.
Okay.
I signed it for two reasons. One, the club wanted me to, and there was links at that stage with me leaving. But I also wanted to, because if I would have stayed on the same contract and I left, I would have left for 200 grand. And I felt that if I leave Swansea, who've given me so much, given them everything, but they gave me the opportunity. I felt that if I left, I wanted them to get more than 200,000, because I felt that if a club wants to take me from Swansea, they'll have to pay for it. And that summer, I had an opportunity to leave to go to a couple of clubs, but I chose to go to Liverpool. I think in terms of Chelsea, with all due respect, I've never ever been offered the tour or whatever. I've had an amazing time there as a youth and reserve coach, and loved the club, and probably said a couple of things when I was young as a manager, which isn't, I would apologise for, but I had a chance to go to Liverpool. And this is one of the iconic institutions in the world. And at that time, again, the Sporting Vision, they were 8th. So I felt that, could I go in and I knew the club was out of the Champions League for 5 years. I understood they were going to have to cut the budget and go to, wages and everything else. But could we then create something with that budget? Because we were outside of the top 6 and it's tough. But the experience of Liverpool was amazing. An incredible institution.
Yeah, Brendan, that brings us nicely onto, my next question. I remember that summer, there were drawn out, processes. I think Roberto Martinez was being linked up. We famously saw him in Miami with John W. Henry. You were being linked. At a stage, it looked like Roberto Martinez was the front runner. Then up pops, the 180-page dossier, one club, one vision, where you handed over to the Liverpool owners your vision for the club. Initially, the club were thinking about appointing a sporting director. Louis van Gaal was being mentioned, but you weren't really keen on that idea. So eventually the club came round to the fact that we believe in this young manager and he's going to be the man to turn around our fortunes. So how was that process going through and negotiating that you wanted more control over what happens at Liverpool?
Yeah, no, it was something, I think at that stage of my career, I was 30, 39. So the club had a sporting director, Damien Comolli, if you remember, he used to be at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Actually, Damien had left. So, and then there was the possibility of maybe bringing in someone else. I suppose my point to the club at the time when I was speaking with them is that probably if you really want to do that, then you probably need to bring in that person before me, as opposed to me come in and then bring in someone else and they might not want me there. So, but all the talks were smooth. The ownership at the time were obviously new into it as well, and they were great with me. They just said, "Look, listen, we want you." So they brought myself in, and yeah, they gave me the support as best they could, and yeah, it went from there.
You know what, Brendan, that question and that answer actually fits in perfectly with the next question that I wanted to ask you, which is how integral to your role and your job that you do as a coach and the manager of the team is being involved in the other aspects and elements of the team. And so by way of comparison, in the latter years of his tenure at Arsenal, one of the things that sort of was generally felt across the fan base and that kind of thing was that he was too involved in the club. So looking at things from a commercial perspective and and transfers and all of these kind of things. And ultimately, these things, to some extent, served as distractions for him in his day-to-day in terms of looking after the team. So from your perspective, how do you see that? Is it really important to you, for example, to be involved in and know about what's happening in the club at a board level? Or do you see it as a bit of a distraction and it's just better to focus on the team and the players that you've got to manage?
You know, I think if you look at Arsenal and what he did there, and he was the last of that probably era of manager where they were the manager and they put in place everything at the club. And what he did for the club was phenomenal, you know. I think if I look now where I am now, as I say, he is a 47-year-old manager to where I was at Liverpool at 39. You know, my view and outlook on that has changed totally, really. I think my strengths are with players on the field, preparing the team. Because of my background in academy, I know quite a bit about a lot of the other various aspects. But what I tend to do now is you tend to trust other people and support other people, because management is a status that you have. But you're only as good a leader by the people that you have. And that's about giving them trust and giving them the possibilities to work and work in a good way. So for me, I'll always have an interest in supporting the commercial team, because when I come into a club, I want to work with everyone. You know, my vision is based around the people, and I want to help the kit man do his job the very best he can. I want to help the person in the stadium. How can I help them? So that's the type I am. However, what I would say is the more experience that I've gained, I've learned to focus on really what my strengths are, and I'm much more experienced in the game now to take a step back and just overview and take it from there. So, and that is the way that football is going also, you know. So you have to, as a manager, you have to go in with authority into any club and listen, this is how I want to work. But then you also have to work with people. And as long as there's a shared vision of that, then you can help and recommend in other departments at the club. But I'm not going to tell the physiotherapist how to do his job when he's a specialist in it. But I'll ask questions.
Yeah.
You know. But as long as we're all for the one goal, then that's what's most important.
So, Brendan, in the summer, obviously, you did bring in Joe Allen and Barini with your team behind you that, you know, contained Ian Eyre, Barry Hunter, Dave Fallows, and a few of the other people that are still at the club now. But in the January's transfer window, I think this was like a massive shift in the dynamic of the Liverpool team. And in my opinion, I think it's the best 20 million the club have spent since I've been supporting the team.
You're not wrong.
Daniel Sturridge for 12 million, Philippe Coutinho for 8 million. The instant impact that they had on the team, how did it make you feel? Did you think, wow, I'm getting closer to what I want to achieve here?
Yeah, I think that if you've watched my teams over a period of time, you'll see I like quite dynamic flexibility, rotation, movement, speed, power. That's make up of my teams. And when I was looking at the team in that first 6 months, there were certain ingredients we were missing. Philippe was one that I knew from my Chelsea days, because we tried to get into Chelsea when he was 14, but he'd already committed to Inter Milan. So we talked about him in the summer, kept tabs on him, and then all of a sudden he became available. And at 19, I thought, wow, right, let's get this boy in. And most people probably look at him and think he's not for the Premier League. But what a talent. He intimidates people when he has the ball with his quality, and it's sad to see. I hear people talk him down at a little moment because it hasn't quite worked out. this boy is top. And if he comes back to the league, he'll show that he's world class. And then obviously, so him, that combination of his technique and flair and unpredictability. And then you've got Daniel, who, if he didn't have the injuries he had, this kid had everything. And for me, for 18 months, he just lit up the Premier League, had everything. You talk about power, touch, speed, finishing, celebrations, everything.
That goal against West Brom, he dated over the keeper and he was doing his dance. That was something special.
Yeah, he's just scored all types of goals. So you think I had the likes of him and Louis with Coutinho and Raheem in behind all that. It was such an explosive front area of the pitch. But that January, the one player that gets like in that little sort of sequence, it was when we started to climb, was Jamie Carragher. Because Jamie was in his last year at Liverpool. His role was to support the centre halves, Daniel Agger and Martin Skirtle. But I watched Jamie in training every day, and I've seen him in the cup games that he played. He never made a mistake. And he was a talker, and he was a great organiser. And there was, it came to the point just after Christmas where I said to my staff, I've got to put Jamie in. I know he's the older statesman, and this is his last year, but for me, he's our best centre half. So he went into the team, Sturridge came into the team, and Coutinho came into the team. And then it was a different sport then. We then, from that January, grew, and then for 18 months, we played some fantastic football.
Yeah, so speaking about Jamie Carragher, I remember reading that he actually came out and said that he was meant to form part of your coaching staff, but that decision actually changed and you actually went for Mike Marsh. What was the thinking behind that decision? Was it the fact that maybe you thought he might cloud your management, you know, being a legend, you didn't want him to overshadow you, or was there other reasons behind it?
Yeah, no, it was pretty straightforward. And it was funny because I'd done an interview earlier on the year when we played Liverpool, and Jay interview, and he asked me that question, you know. So it was straightforward. I was going in with the intention of asking him to come into my coaching staff, rather than the playing side. But when I actually met him, when I had joined as manager, and I met him before we started pre-season, the communication with him, it just seemed more that he wanted to be on the playing side and still focus on the playing. And if that was the case, it wasn't going to be the role for him, because I needed someone, a bit like what Colo Touré, you know, if you think of what Colo's done for me, you know, I took him to Liverpool, then to Celtic, and then when he thought he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and I gave him the offer of coming into my technical team, he did that, and then he really focused on the coaching, and that's what I was sort of looking in a similar role for Jamie. But he was right. He wanted to continue to play, but I didn't sort of see the player coach combination at that time. But he was absolutely first class for me in my time there.
Brendan, in the interest of time, we're going to fast forward to that, you know, terrific season where Liverpool just missed out on the league. Obviously, you had the SAS partnership, you know, causing destruction to all defenders. But to me, from the outside looking in, I think after that Chelsea game, it took a lot out of you. And I think Steven Gerrard, in his autobiography, wrote that, you know, you said go out and blow them away. Looking back in hindsight, would you have approached that game differently?
Well, firstly, I didn't say that. That was something that I didn't say. the game against Chelsea was, so if you think on it, we're coming off the back of 11 games on the spin, winning. So nothing changes. Why would we change? You know, I think that again, I talked about the emotion. It was really building at that stage. And at that point, we hadn't lost at home. So for us, let's go and play the game that we've played all year, impose our way into the game. And but we knew it was going to be a difficult game. For 70 minutes of the game, take away Demba Ba's goal, we actually played well. You know, we had chances to score, couldn't score. But then our inexperience, not just in terms of young players, but inexperience of being in that position for lots of people, and I suppose the emotion around being behind 1-0, then that became difficult for us. But I certainly didn't say to go out and blow them away. That was never ever was the instruction. It was go and play our game, which was to go and impose our way, you know, and it was just unfortunate what happened on the day.
Yeah, so Brendan, it subsequently came out, Steven Gerrard in his autobiography said on the eve of that Chelsea game, he had a disc issue, and he actually told Strand Marshall that his back was messed up. Did you ever know about this sort of issue that Gerrard was going through? And if so, how did you approach it?
I didn't know.
Wow.
I didn't know. So that's the first I've heard of it.
So if you did know, how would you have, you know, addressed that situation? Legend of the club, but wanting to play, but having an injury. Would you have thought about the team first, or would you have kept it?
No, I think what you do in that situation, with any player, is you have a chat. How are you feeling? How are you doing? I've had similar chats with other players there and throughout my career. You know, there's been times where players have been struggling. You know, I remember a game with Luis Suarez, you know, away at Wigan. He'd come back from international duty. His calf was really tight, and he looked tired, and he had travelled right way across the world. And I looked at him and I thought, I don't think I can start him. We were playing a game on 5:15, I think it was, against Wigan on telly. I'm thinking, I'm not sure I can put him in. But I asked, listen, how are you feeling, Louis? And he went, listen, let me see how I am tomorrow, boss, and we'll take it from there. I asked him on the day of the game, yeah, okay, well, so, right, we're going to give him a go. We win 4-0. He scores a hat-trick and was absolutely amazing. So that communication with the player, I'll always speak with the player if they have a niggle like that. But of course, it's such a big game, and Stephen's priority and type will be that he can get through it, and probably wanted to make sure he got through it. So yeah, Stephen was great for me in my time then, in particular those first 2 years, because we changed his position from being a number 10 into being a playmaker, but from behind. Yeah. And those first couple of years in particular, he was playing at a really high level. It's just unfortunate. You know, you just could not have written that at the time, you know. The only thing I would pull the two centre-halves in a bit. I don't know why they're that wide. You know, the two centre-halves at the time when Stever drops in.
Yeah.
If they're, that's what I'm saying, you get a bit more experience, then they'll naturally be a bit tighter. So if someone does slip or make a mistake, then they can get in on the cover. But listen, we are all experts in hindsight, eh?
Of course.
2020.
So, Brendan, what I wanted to ask, during that summer, Luis Suarez left, and there was a lot of negotiation. I remember the club tried to get Alexis Sanchez from, before he went to Arsenal. Yeah. That failed. You came out and said, we are not interested in Mario Balotelli. A few weeks later, the club signed him. I know you tried to sign Benzema, Cavani, a lot of other suitable options, which, as you mentioned, fit your style of play. During that summer, after losing such a key player, one of the best strikers in the world, do you think that the club backed you properly?
Well, it was always going to be very difficult to replace Lou. He was a genuine world-class player. he was fantastic, and there was always a little bit of stuff written about that team that it was a one-man team, and that was really unfair.
Yeah, it was disrespectful to you, I believe.
Yeah, and also to the players. We created a team. That's like saying Tottenham's built around Harry Kane. Harry Kane's a top world striker, but he needs the other guys around him as well. And likewise with the likes of ourselves, like the likes of we Jamie here. He's a top level striker. My philosophy is to be attacking and with that intent. So of course the attacking players will always shine in that. But yeah, I think for when Louis left, we were missing that little that spark. And like you say, Alexis Sanchez. And
so what happened with that deal? Was it ever close?
Yeah, but we had spoken over the summer, and I was led to believe that his partner at the time was keen to move to London, and he ended up obviously going to Arsenal and done fantastic there. So we missed out, and at that time we had Daniel, and Daniel had been struggling a little bit with injury. With Fabio Borini, who was looking to move on to Sunderland, and we brought in Ricky Lambert, and Ricky was coming in to be the sort of fourth choice striker, to come in and help us and support in cup games and whatnot. But then how it ended up with Louis gone and Fabio gone and Daniel being around but being the only one along with Ricky, then that left us in a really vulnerable position. So listen, I think it's pretty clear to see that how strikers that I've always worked with, that Mario didn't fit my style. But the one thing I'll say about Mario is he has all the talent, and he genuinely has. I hear things about players thinking he could be that, and when I watch them and see them, and if I've worked with them, I can normally see the reason why. With Mario, he should be one of the top 3 strikers in world football. He is everything.
So what's that missing link then?
Well, it's the difference between a talent and a working talent. It's absolutely, it's as simple as that. You go on to Hackney Marshes, I bet you there's some world-class talent there.
Dej himself, Brendan.
But don't want to work.
Yeah.
And so, but it was just unfortunate. He'd come in, and when Lou had left, and then of course that we were missing it. He'd actually his first game, Mario done very well. We played, Tottenham had made a decent start with Maurizio. And then in one of our first games there, we won 3-0 at White Hart Lane, and we were very, very good. And he played.
Moreno scored that goal, I remember.
Yeah. Mario played with Daniel in a diamond, and they worked so well, and they were a threat. The problem was that after that game, Daniel got injured, and then that left Mario up there on his own. And then we went through a period where we just couldn't. We weren't pressing the game. We weren't dynamic and intense enough. And then after a number of weeks, I thought, I need to change something here, because we've lost this. We've lost this ingredient in the team of which we had built upon. And that's when I played Raheem as a striker. And Raheem, we went to 3-4-3, and Raheem played as a central striker, dropping underneath, and he was so good.
So Brendan, how do you sum up your time at Liverpool? Because I remember your, final full season, Steven Gerrard's last game in a Liverpool shirt. I think it was a 6-1 defeat against Stoke. And for me as a fan, I was very, very upset at that time, because I knew you were a special manager, but I thought you lost a bit of confidence in yourself. So when I speak to Liverpool fans, a lot of them say Brendan's a top manager, he's a top manager, he's a top manager. And there's some that say, Brendan, he's a confidence manager. So how do you sum up your time at Liverpool?
I had a wonderful experience. the first, in particular, the first 2 years of building towards the that run that we had to nearly win the title was incredible. We then lost one of the real catalysts of our team. The third year, actually, I found out a lot about myself in terms of a coaching perspective, because we were on a not a great run, and then I had to change it. And we ended up then coming back into the season and playing really well in that system. But in that third season, when we just fell short in the FA Cup, where Aston Villa beat us and beat us well in that game. I think everyone was wanting to try and get a trophy. And after we lost that there, we probably we dipped in our performance level. And then, of course, that last game of the season, that wasn't really a true reflection of how we worked. And funny enough, the beginning of the season, the first game of the season was away at Stoke. And we had to show a lot of mentality. And because only literally 6-7 weeks later, we were back playing at Stoke in the first game, and we won 1-0. So that was a good feeling to brush aside that memory. But I'll never forget the experience at Liverpool, a truly iconic club. Times are different now. When I took over the team, they were in 8th position, out of the Champions League. My big objective for that time from the club was, can you get us back into the Champions League? We were able to do that. We nearly won the title, and it obviously dipped towards the end, which it sometimes does as a manager. But it will never, ever take away the amazing experience I had there of one of the truly great clubs in the world.
Final one on Liverpool before we move on. I remember the game away against Everton, the 1-1 draw, Danny Ings scoring. You came to the away end and you were clapping. For me as a Liverpool fan, it looked a bit ominous that you were saying your goodbyes. Then hours later, after the Arsenal game, it was announced that the club had now parted with you. Going into that game, did you know that change was near and that you were going to be leaving the club?
No, not at all. I think there was a few stories that was going around, which happens in media and whatnot, but I didn't know a thing. Clearly, obviously, the decision was made, but I wasn't aware of it. The first I spoke to the ownership was with Mike Gordon on the way back after the game. When I arrived back at the training ground, I got in the car and I was driving home, and I got the call from Mike. So that was the first I knew. And listen, I thanked him for it, for the experience. I understood, where they were coming from, and we parted in good terms, and we both move on.
Now, obviously, after leaving Liverpool, Brendan, you moved to another really huge institution in Celtic. And I can imagine that this was a very special move for you because, growing up, all of your family were huge Celtic supporters, right? And you had a bit of a King Midas touch because everything you were doing was working. Led them to an undefeated domestic first season. And as we alluded to in the intro, managed to do the domestic treble twice, back to back. When you first moved there, and you were having sort of pre-season, one of the things that you mentioned was that it was important to get the players up to fitness, not only physically, but mentally as well. And so I just wanted to ask for you to sort of dive into that a bit more. How do you go about helping coach a player from a mentality perspective and helping them to get up to speed from that point of view?
When I got into Celtic, Ronnie Daly had been in, and Ronnie had 2 good years, but they just lost to us in the semi-final of the Cup, and Rangers had beaten them well on the day, even though it was on penalties. And then Rangers were then coming into the league again for the first time. So there was a bit of a trepidation around for a lot of Celtic supporters and people at the club that Rangers were a better football team than them at that point, and they were coming into the league. So for me, and understanding the mentality of Celtic and the big club, is that it was to go in there and create again the vision of, right, this is how we're going to work. This is the standards that we set. and that every day of your life in training is everything. So there's no easy days. So that's your job as the manager, is to go in and convince the players that this is how we're going to work, so that they can really go onto the pitch and believe in that. And it's just something that's drip fed in every single day, both in training, through communication, and at Celtic you're into it very quickly, because if you win the league, you're straight into Champions League qualifiers. And Celtic was another club that had been out of the Champions League for about 3 seasons, so a bit similar to where Liverpool were 5, Celtic were 3. So the big objective was to get back into the Premier League, or into the Champions League, sorry. So that's where work started, virtually straight away. It was a huge privilege for me to go there. I always wanted to manage Celtic at some point in my coaching life. So to be able to do it, going at that point, it was a real honour for me. And then we were straight into the work, and from the first day I joined, it was absolutely phenomenal. And but yeah, in terms of changing how they played and changing the mentality, it's a day-to-day thing that you set in terms of the standards as a manager.
When you were appointed, Peter Lowell came out and said it was a massive coup for the club. And when I look at Celtic, particularly when you were there, you kind of know Celtic will win the league, but it's about excellence. And what you achieved, you've done it in a spectacular fashion that hasn't been seen before. Looking at it from a managerial point of view, you're always going to be judged in the Champions League for Celtic. When competing against the likes of Man City, Bayern Munich, PSG, it was maybe a step too far. But how did you find that challenge, pitting your wits against the top managers, unrestricted, finances?
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it. Of course, there's a huge disparity in terms of the wages, but we had, if you think back to that time at Man City when Pep came in, the first 10 games they went away, they were great. And the first stumble they had was away at Celtic.
Free game, yeah.
Yeah, so we played ever so well. And then, like you say, you're playing against Bayern Munich and PSG. And of course, it's so important to a club like Celtic. People still down here don't understand the sheer size of it, but it's a huge institution, and there'll always be that expectation. And obviously, remember, Celtic were the first ever British club to win the European Cup, so they always carry that expectancy around the club. So, but no, I enjoyed every second of being there, and all the various competitions that we would be in.
Brendan, final question from me on Celtic is, what do you say to the people that try and water down your achievements in Scotland because they say, it's a one-team league, going invincible doesn't really count? What do you have to say to people that discredit those achievements at Celtic? Because for me, they were sensational.
Yeah, I think it's just whatever narrative people will want to take. You either look at it and we won 7 trophies in a row in our time there. We created a British unbeaten record where we went 69 games. Our first invincible season was the first time it was ever done. We created a history there. We scored the most goals. We won 34 games of 38. So in all the generations of Scottish football, that was never done, even though there's been some great teams and managers and players in that period. So we just had an exceptional time there. If it gets watered down, listen, it doesn't. I couldn't care less, for me from a personal perspective, because it's the nature of it. It depends on the narrative. If people want to discredit it, fine. People want to look at it and go, it's a big pressure to turn up every single game and win and come back from a Barcelona away and then still win again. It's tough from a mental perspective. But I had an incredible time there, and it was a huge privilege for me to manage it.
And then Brendan, after you, had achieved all that you had achieved at Celtic, you then obviously moved on to Leicester. And going back to that time, you were on the cusp of doing something else that was unprecedented and had not been done before, right? And you remember the banner, the famous banner which read "Immortality or mediocrity" when you were sort of making that move. Looking back at it, was that perhaps the most difficult decision you've had to make in your managerial career, in that you're on the cusp of something so great, but then you've got another great and wonderful opportunity moving to Leicester?
Yeah, it is. It is so difficult. One, because again, the people. We had from when we went into the club to where the club was at that point. It was a different club. The connection between the supporters, the team, and the matter, and everything was really strong. We were in an incredible period. I was only the third manager in the history of the club to complete the treble. We were able to do it as an invincible treble, and then we did it again. So, and then people will say, "Well, you could have stayed and done a third one," and then you could have done a fourth one. I felt at the time when I left Celtic, the team was 8 points clear. And when you think of all the seasons up until that point, Celtic had always won the league by double figures. My previous season, we won by, 30 points. So I felt, and strategically, that, okay, we'd won the League Cup, 8 points clear in the league, and the team is then in a good position in the Scottish Cup as well. So if it was 1 point, I couldn't leave. But I felt that when I spoke with my staff and then took the ultimate decision that the team's in a good place, there's a mentality now within the team, and you feel, and not just in hindsight, but you feel the club will continue and can go on and win the treble again. And then I can come into Leicester, where I can look at the team under pressure for 10 games and then see how the players are. And then I can then build something in the summer to then hopefully come into this season and take off. And listen, again, there'll be fors and against that, but ultimately you have to be unsentimental in football life, because this is a business. You love football, I love football, we watch it, it's incredible, but it's also a business, eh? It's also a business, and when you have to make decisions, you have to be unsentimental in them. Like, I had family who were just distraught.
Yeah.
I left Celtic, just couldn't believe it. I've relations that haven't spoke to me since the day I left Celtic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's
That's
just
how much it meant to them.
It meant so much to them. Wow. And if you carry all of that too much, you would never do anything, would you? So, but Celtic I had some unforgettable memories at Celtic that live with me for a lifetime, that I still think about now. And I then come into my next experience. And for me, I left school with nothing. No qualifications, no nothing. My life has been based on experiences. Hence the reason why I look for the experiences. And this, for me, I felt from a sporting perspective, was going to be the next good experience.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, coming to Leicester, Claude Puel was the manager before. The press said his style of play was pedantic, slow, and you're obviously the total opposite to that. You like pressing with energy, pressing from the front, playing on the front foot. Leicester, from the outside looking in, if you believe media reports, people call it, the player power stadium, because, of recent managers, the players have been accused of getting them out of the job. But from working with these players, the Kasper Schmeichels, the Wesley Morgans, the Jamie Vardys, how would you describe the dressing room environment, and how have you gone about freshening up the team?
Yeah, obviously all these stories and whatnot, and of course I'd seen some of them from the outside. But the manager's the manager. The manager has the authority. But what you have to have is you have to have good leaders in your changing room. And from the first day I walked into here, the guys that you mentioned, Wes Morgan is one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Absolutely, what a guy this guy is. I was coming through lower level, right the way through. He's won the Premier League, and how he trains every day at 36. He's just like a big kid and a genuine, honest guy. Kasper Schmeichel cares. 33, but throws himself about every day. He wants to win. He wants to do well. Jamie Vardy, look at him, 33, his body, how he looks after himself. Johnny Evans, Christian Fuchs, all these guys. It's about leading them. It's about creating a vision for them and for them to feel a part of it. Because the game's about the players. The game is the players. And you guide and support and then create the focus for them and the mentality for them in order to succeed. So I've never had one problem with them at all. I've come in on day one, showed my vision. This is how I want to work. These are the standards that will set the mentality. And if you want to be a part of the journey, then great.
Brendan, final one. You've been absolutely terrific. We've learned a lot during this, and thank you very much. But what do you have to say to the Leicester faithful? They're not going to be able to watch their team, at the stadium for a very long time. You guys are building something amazing at the club with young players, experienced players. The owners have backed you. So what is your message to the fans?
Well, I think firstly, in this period of time and going forward, the key first message is to make sure you stay safe and well. We will all be winners if we come out of this here and are all alive and well. It's a virus that I think everyone has seen that has had catastrophic consequences for so many families. So the important thing is to stay safe. We, from whatever which way we can, will try to entertain them, whether they have to sit at home or sit somewhere else if they can't be in the stadium. We will continue to fight and work and run to make them proud for wherever they are watching. We'd obviously prefer for them to be in the stadium. But if they can't be, we will carry them with us as close as we can, and we will ensure that the cause we're fighting for isn't just for ourselves out on the field with no fans, but for them as well, wherever they are watching. So stay safe, and we can continue to give you the pride in your team that hopefully you've had for the last period of time.
Brendan.
It's been an absolute pleasure. The time's flown by. I'm sure, got so many more questions we'd love to run by you, but of course, in the interest of time, we know you're a very busy guy. You've got plans and things that you need to sort of crack on with and that kind of thing. So we really appreciate the time that you have shared with us. Like Dot already mentioned, we've learned loads. We've spoken about your career and got your thoughts and views on so many different things, and we really appreciate it. And we know 100% our listeners are definitely going to appreciate this one. Don't you agree, guys?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Brendan. I think this is massive for our community. Where we're from, we see managers on the TV, and it's sort of like they're over there, we're over here. We're not going to mix. And I think by you coming onto our platform, it's going to open the minds of many people from our community to say that we can have normal conversations about football with our heroes and our idols. So once again, Brendan, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Brendan.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you, Brendan.
Absolute pleasure. And if you ever need any support, help, because at the end of the day, we're all people, eh?
Yeah.
Not sort of players up there. We're people that's trying to help each other. So if you need any help, support, just let me know.
Thank you, Brendan. Absolute honor.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy your day.
Guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
All the best.
Take care. All the
Appreciate
best.
that, Brendan.
All the best.
Bye.
So there you have it, guys. We're going to leave it there.
I thought we ended.
Pleasure. You heard it from the horse's mouth. That was Brendan Rodgers. So before we sign out, as per usual, we need to remind you, if you're not yet following, I don't know what you're doing. We've given you multiple warnings. We've told you we've got big things coming. Maybe now you'd listen and take heed. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Beautiful Game. You can listen to our episodes also on Spotify, SoundCloud, and on Apple Podcasts as well. If you are listening in on Apple Podcasts, please make sure you leave a 5-star review. If you're not yet following us on Instagram, it's at pod_TBG, and on Twitter at podcast_TBG. And we are going to continue delivering and providing you guys with top-level content. So stay tuned until the next episode. Over and out.
Man, it's crazy, man. Peace.